Hello everyone, my name is Jessie and welcome to Plot Twists. So today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up. I have read 6 books this month. As always, we're going to start with some book stats and then we'll go into my reviews of each book. So over the course of the month of February, I did read 6 books. The majority of those books were medium paced, which I think is probably my preferred reading speed. About half of those books were less than 300 pages, which for me is kind of unheard of. But I read a graphic novel and a novella last month, and that definitely brought my page counts down. I also read one nonfiction book, which I thought was excellent. As you guys know, I'm trying to increase my nonfiction reads, so I enjoyed that. I'll put the graph of my genre breakdown up here, but primarily fantasy, primarily YA. Not really a surprise there either, but definitely a lot of different genres that we hit on this month. About a third of the books I read last month were digital, and that's because I read 2 NetGalley arcs that we'll talk about. But for me, that's practically unheard of, which is really good. Definitely trying to expand my format of reading. My average rating last month was also 4.42, which I think is pretty good. I did have 3 5-star reads, and that was definitely helpful. And then the last thing I'm going to share is just the page breakdown of how much I read each day. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the reviews of the books. I'm going to do them in order from least enjoyed to most enjoyed. The first book that I want to talk about that I read last month is Influencer: Building Your Personal Brand in the Age of Social Media by Brittany Hennessy. I was hoping that this particular book would give me a lot of insight into how to continue growing my Bookstagram and YouTube channel, those kinds of things, the TikTok that I've started. But this book is definitely geared at people who are already further down the line than I am. So there were a couple of good tips that I got out of it, but mostly I found that it didn't apply to me. For that reason, I've rated this book 3 stars. Not to say that it's not a good book. I just personally didn't find it very interesting or helpful. The next book that we're going to talk about is a NetGalley arc that I read last month. It is a middle grade graphic novel, choose your own adventure book called 8th Grade Witch. This book centers around a young boy who has recently moved to a brand new town with his family. And the house that he has moved into has a long history of being known in the town for being previously owned by a witch. He has some interactions with the neighborhood kids, and there's obviously, as a choose your own adventure, a lot of different ways the story could go. One of the things that I thought was particularly interesting about this is choose your own adventure is a format I really enjoy, but I've never read that in a graphic novel before, and I really enjoyed it. Graphic novels in general, I find very easy to read. This book was easy to pick up at any point, and there were a lot of different possible endings, and it took me quite a while to read through all of them to give an accurate review. I ended up rating this 4 stars. The next book that I want to talk about is Mistborn: A Secret History by Brandon Sanderson. This is a novella set in the Mistborn universe. And I'm not entirely sure how I can tell you more than that without giant spoilers. So let me just say, as somebody who did read both the first trilogy and the second trilogy in the Mistborn series, there were parts of this novella that I thought were mind-blowing. And it definitely provided a lot more context for some of the things that happens in the series. If it's not something that you've picked up and this is a series that you've read, I cannot recommend it enough. It also gave some more insight into how the magic system in the Cosmere works, and I really enjoyed that as well. Overall, I rated this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I think that's only because it was a novella as opposed to a full-length book. The next book that I want to talk about is The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second book in the Inheritance Games trilogy. This continues along with the story from the first book, centering our main character of Avery, who has inherited this ginormous fortune, and she still really doesn't know why. And this book continues along with her journey with the 4 grandsons of the man that she inherits all this money from, trying to figure out some family secrets and why Avery has come to inherit all of this money. One of the things that I liked most about this story, without giving any plot spoilers away, this book has a fairly large plot twist at the end, and it is not at all what I saw coming. I thought, based on the first book, I really knew where this series was headed, and the plot twist at the end of this book threw me for such a loop that I was so bummed that this next book doesn't come out until August 30th, and I have to wait a couple months to be able to read it. I definitely will be picking this last book up on release, and I think this is one of my favorite series that I've read so far this year. The mystery in this book is just so good. The way the author writes it, how the characters pick up little clues, and you as the reader are definitely given the opportunity to solve the mystery yourself as this goes along. This book also has some really great relationships between the characters. The setting is still super interesting, and there's definitely more portions of the world that you get to see in this book opposed to the last. I don't know, I just really enjoyed this one. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I want to talk about is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I have been looking forward to picking this up for so long. BookTube raves about how good this story is, and I was definitely really looking forward to it. So this centers around our main character of January, who is at the beginning of this book learning how to cope with the death of her father and finding out some things about her dad she didn't know that definitely have changed her opinions on a lot of her world. To kind of decompress and cope with where she is in life, she goes out to this cabin that her dad left her in his will, and next door she finds Augustus, who is a college rival that she hasn't seen in many years. Both January and Augustus are writers, but they write very different books. And January is definitely struggling at the beginning of this to churn out her next novel after the death of her father. So, Augustus and January kind of cut. Of course, because they're neighbors, Augustus and January do eventually end up talking, and as a result of the conversation, they end up making a bet that they can't switch genres and write about the other person's style, basically. This book also includes both of them taking the other person on adventures to do research for their particular books. I adored this. The romance aspect of this is so good. It is developed over the course of the book. It never feels rushed or like it's taking too long. The characters' reactions are logical. This feels like a real romance that I could watch developing in real life, and that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about romance novels. I also really enjoyed Emily Henry's writing style and the way she portrays her characters. And for that reason, I'm really excited to read more Emily Henry. In general, though, I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. And if you're looking for a new romance to pick up and haven't read this one, I definitely recommend it. And the last book that I want to talk about is definitely my favorite read of February, and that was All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody. This was a NetGalley arc that I am way behind on reading. but managed to catch it right before it archived. So this book takes place in a world with magic and centers around 7 families that vie for control of that magic. Every 20 years, they have a fight to the death where each family sends one family member to compete, and the winner has control of the magic for the next 20 years. This book follows 4 different perspectives, each one from one of the 7 families that are competing in this particular event. This book definitely gives me Hunger Games with magic vibes, and that's kind of the way the story is set up. You get to see some of the background from the characters in this novel, and you also get to see part of the contest. This book is a duology, and the sequel is coming out in August, I believe, and I will most definitely be picking this up. I loved that this book had multiple perspectives so that you could learn more about each of the, well, a good portion of the families that are competing in this particular context. I think that's something that I wanted more of in the Hunger Games, and I think for that reason I really enjoyed it in this book. I also enjoyed learning more about the history of the contest itself, and kind of the background of each of the families and why winning is so important for them. I also thought each of the characters was very different and extremely realistic. The author definitely took time to give each of them backstories so that they would have very different perceptions of the contest and very different motivations to win. Each character is definitely in a very different place in their life based on some of the events that have occurred, and I enjoyed that as well. This book also had some really solid plot twists that I definitely did not see coming. And they definitely altered the story in really interesting ways. If you have not picked this book up and you are into the idea of like a Hunger Games with magic type story, I cannot recommend this enough. I have a feeling this is going to be one of the best books that I've read in all of 2022, and I cannot wait for the sequel to release so that I can pick this up as well. Alright guys, so that wraps up my February wrap up. Let me know in the comments down below what were some of your favorite reads in February. As always, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon down below for notifications. I try to post videos every 5 days, but definitely once a week, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye!